Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be testing the 105 grain 9mm Guard Dog home defense round manufactured by Federal Premium. Now behind the ammunition today, we have our two testing weapons. Standing in for our compact, we have the Smith & Wesson Shield in 9mm, and then on the right there we have the Beretta 92FS, and that's going to be our full-size testing weapon. We're going to be testing this using Clear Ballistics Gelatin from clearballistics.com. So now let's take a closer look at the bullet itself. So by a quick glance, we can tell that the ammunition looks quite different from normal ammo that's manufactured for home defense or self-defense. This is actually a full metal jacket flat nose round, and we're not going to find lead inside this projectile. We're going to find blue polymer. So if we move these to the side and take a look at the box, we can tell that the round is actually designed to expand once it hits both drywall or soft tissue. That way it minimizes the risk of overpenetration. And if we look on the rear here, we get a little surprising note here. The muzzle velocity is only 1,230 feet per second, and that is quite slow for a 105 grain projectile. Usually you'd expect to see much higher velocities for such a light projectile. A lot of defensive rounds try to take advantage of having a light projectile in order to reach high velocities, but with the Federal Guard Dog, it seems they're very interested in minimizing the risk of overpenetration. So we're going to shoot that in the Clear Ballistics Gelatin and see how it performs. So let's take a look at the results. We have 5 of the 6 rounds still in the ballistics gelatin. One of the rounds actually punched out the side, which is the bottom as you're looking at it. So the first round from the 92FS entered the gel and started expanding at the 0.25 inch mark, creating a 0.5 maximum diameter cavity here at the 3 inch mark, which depreciated out to the 8 inch mark until we see no visual permanent cavity, which again picks up at the 9 inch mark, creating a 1/8 inch permanent cavity that reaches all the way out to the 12 inch mark here. Now it seems that the round actually penetrated to 12.25 inches and had what's called bounce back. That's when the round punches through the medium, but because the ballistics gelatin has a strong elasticity, it actually gets pulled back a little bit. So there is damage out to that 12.25 mark. Now moving on, the round that we fired second out of the 92 came just below the first. That one immediately started expanding, creating a very similar path. We have that 0.5 inch permanent cavity at 3 inches that depreciates, but this time it went out to the 8.25 inch mark. Again, we do not see a permanent cavity until we pick up here at the 9.5 inch mark this time. And that round penetrated all the way out to 13 inches. And it looks like we have similar expansion. Now the third round eventually ended up getting mixed up here with one of the Smith & Wesson Shield rounds. It looks like it had a very similar performance. As we can tell, it's got that 0.75 inch permanent cavity, which is probably due to 2 rounds taking the same path throughout the ballistics gelatin. So we'll count it as a 0.5 inch permanent cavity. As we can tell, very similar performance, except we still have a permanent cavity here running from the 8 to the 9 inch mark. And this round came to rest again at the 12.25 inch mark. So if we move on to the shield, we see a surprisingly similar performance. I expected to see a slightly less penetration from the shield because of the shorter barrel, but it seems that because of the lack of velocity in this round, there really wasn't much of a difference. So we'll start off with this very interesting one here. As we can tell, it entered, created a 0.4 inch permanent cavity instead of that 0.5 inch that reached all the way out again until that 8 inch mark. From there we see remnants of a permanent cavity, but nothing too substantial. But then we pick up with a 1/8 inch permanent cavity again at the 9.25 inch mark, and that reaches all the way out until the 12.75 inch mark. And the round is actually sticking halfway out of the gel here, which is pretty neat. I didn't even realize that until we got home from the range, so I'm glad it didn't fall out. Now our second shot came behind this first one. Very similar performance, except this one kind of yawed down a little bit. Same exact performance. As we can tell from that 8 inch mark on, we have no visual permanent cavity until that 10 inch mark, where we see what looks to be a 1/32 inch permanent cavity, and then the round punched out what would be the side of the block, so we lost that round. Finally, the third round came in with that third round from the 92FS. Went through about the same path, had very similar performance, and came to rest here at the 12.25 inch mark. So we're going to pull all these out to examine the expansion to see how the Federal Guard Dog performed. So these are the 5 rounds we recovered from the ballistics gelatin, and as you can tell, we have complete and uniform expansion among all projectiles. Now that's something we don't usually run into in the firearms community, and that's unfortunate. I wish we ran into it a lot more. Now, before I get into my conclusion, I just want to take some time to thank you guys for viewing our videos. One of you guys actually stepped up to fund about 5 of our tests, including this one here. Now, obviously, we don't expect any sort of monetary support from you guys, but it is very much appreciated when it does occur. Now, getting into our conclusion, I feel like this ammunition performed as advertised, but it's not necessarily the best choice for defensive use. I would recommend the Federal HSTs in either 124 grain or 147 grain. They seem to perform a little bit better while still minimizing the risk of overpenetration. Now, TN Outdoors 9 did a test on the Federal Guard Dog. I'll put a link in the description. He uses sim test media instead of the clear ballistics. And if I remember correctly, he ran into a little bit of problem with this Federal Guard Dog that we didn't see here today. Now, leave a comment below if you guys are planning on using this ammunition or what you think about it. Make sure to share the video with your friends to get the word out about this type of ammunition. And thanks for watching today, guys. I hope you have a nice day.